We drop from the sky with a mission to ignite in the heart of the chaos where we fight for the light. Suit up, lock and load with a last line of defense. In the face of the darkness we stand tall and we're intense. Through the storm and the fire we'll never back down. With unwavering courage we wear the crown. From the ashes we rise in the heat of the night. Together we conquer, together we fight. Into the fight we die, we soar. Hell divers hear a battle. Against the swarm we're standing strong. In this inferno we belong.
Evening's freedoms, Helldivers. That was Into the Fire by Aspect of Evil, a relatively new artist that I discovered only today. And with a name like that, apparently this is the guy responsible for those new balance chain decisions. Oh, sick burn. I'm just kidding, Arrowhead. You know I love you. It's been quite a rough day on the front lines, hasn't it? I have to put a retraction to the few things that I said last night. Firstly, that impalers have no sight organs. They're actually just well hidden behind their retractable armor plating. No, they have a lot of eyes. Like, a lot. I actually really, truly hate these things. Like, they are worse than gunships on the worst day. With hunters pouncing, fart bags smoking up your vision, Bile Titans doing their usual hitty, smashy, barfy thing. If one of these naughty video refugees shows up, he can easily ruin your whole day. These tentacles reach out really, really far. There's no way to tell where this annoying jerk is relative to where he's trying to hit you from, and all it takes is one direct hit to reduce a Helldiver to a modern art piece. My other retraction was calling the new Brood Commanders Devilkin. Apparently, they're just called Alpha Brood Commanders. Honestly, my name for them was way better. Regardless, these things are satanic, and ideally should be sent back to the abyss in as violent a manner as possible. They're already trying to do this to you, so it's only fair. In regards to the galactic news, Socorro has proven to be a nightmarish hellscape for divers, fittingly enough, with the rough terrain, poor visibility, and new Terminid strains creating an extremely unpleasant, claustrophobic environment that has already claimed the lives of nearly 8 million SEAF personnel. Fortunately, the defense is succeeding in a narrow margin, with 43,000 super destroyers in orbit trying their best to make Terminids on this planet an endangered species instead of be a point of least concern. Cruzica is slowly and steadily losing ground as the nearly defeated swarms there slowly recover and regain some offensive momentum, likely aided by their new combat strains, who have universally appeared across the swarm on every planet that Terminids can be found. That's just great. Urshan Sands is faring the worst of the planets currently under siege by the insectoid invaders and stands to lose its defense soundly. This appears to be a result of the insanely large Terminid spore cloud coming from the planets of... Oh, fluff you. I am not even going to make an attempt at these names until I could rent out Defender of Freedom's ship AI and she can give me a speech therapy lesson. Regardless, the cloud coming from these two planets here has expanded roughly 13% over the past 24 hours. The cause of this is unknown, but the purpose is clear. Spreading Terminids to every planet within range, within numbers that are just completely unreasonable. Once our business with this major order is concluded, it is clear that we're going to have to venture into the... Darn it, I'd hoped this sector name would be easier to pronounce. Lestrade? The Outer Terminid Periphery. Whatever, it gets the point across. My pronunciation woes aside, it is clear that something nefarious is happening over there, and it needs to be stopped. On the other side of the galactic sphere, the bots remain completely ruined and utterly paralyzed after the events of Operation Iron Wrath. While their new war forms are impressive and certainly deadly, they just can't muster any major force on a strategic scale. Their only gains are on the perpetually unfortunate and forever cursed Vandalon 4, which is slowly chipping away at any remaining SEAF holdings on the planet. This concludes Galactic War News for the evening. Now, before I get into this next bit, I just want to put aside my in-character persona for a moment and just say that this is my storytelling, a storyline I am pursuing in the show. Don't bother looking for more official lore on this because you won't find it. I'm not jamming any agenda down people's throats. This is just an idea I've been experimenting with on the various Discord boards, and people have been mostly receptive. So I'm going to further test the waters. This is lore that I personally wrote, and I want to entertain you with. Nothing more, nothing less. That being out of the way, let's get into tonight's conversational topic. An obscure, out-of-the-way matter that the Ministry of Truth would rather people just ignore entirely and I stop talking about. Human mutation and fauna sapiens. Who are they? What are they? Are they a potential threat to Super Earth? Can we trust them? All questions we will get into tonight. Ever since our first encounter with the Terminids over 100 years ago during the First Galactic War, two things became very well known about them. One, they're extremely genetically adaptable. I mean, look at images from FGW Terminids versus SGW Terminids. They look completely different, except the impaler. That one's about the same. The second matter we know is that when they die, Terminids break down into element 710, which has astonishing energy generation abilities and fuels our super destroyers. It also makes the Alcubierre FTL drives go burr, and our method of faster-than-light travel is fascinating enough to warrant its own show. But we're just going to stick a pin in that for right now. What if I told you that element 710 and Terminid genetic flexibility are inherently related? It doesn't come up very often, and most of the time it's completely harmless to human life. But there are documented cases where 710 exposure affects a pregnant mother-to-be and the baby she is carrying in unusual, non-harmful ways. What ends up happening is that the little life growing inside of her, the 710 imparts a tiny bit of a Terminid's genetic flexibility to them. Not enough to be considered a Terminid life form, nothing that extreme, but it is enough to skew the baby's development if the mother is further exposed to biomatter from a genetically compatible life form, like a family pet or certain wildlife. The end result is a mutated human form that has certain animal traits, depending on the accidentally introduced genetics in question. The Ministry of Science has dubbed these collections of traits affinities. I am one such being, working as a democracy officer, 110% loyal to Super Earth, as you have seen, but it is listed in my personnel file that I possess a feline affinity. Now, some might say that Super Earth doesn't really care about any of this, gender or race, so long as you're willing to fight. But that's the interesting part, dear viewers. Some affinities grant abilities far beyond what an unmutated human is capable of. The kind of things that they have to jam like 40 experimental stims to pull off. I can see extremely well in the dark, and can hear a scavenger hiccup at 500 paces in the middle of a swamp. And when I fall, I always land on my feet, before you ask. My brother has a canid affinity, which means he has the traits of a gray wolf, and some breathtaking anger management issues in the middle of a fight, prone to feral rages that tend to end with some 500 and change Terminid kills later. It's also why he doesn't frequent social media very much, or really at all anymore. People make him feel uncomfortable, and he's more at home on a battlefield than in an officer's lounge. He'd rather respond to SOS beacons than drop with a consistent squad, and as far as I know, I'm the only person he really talks to. But let's get back on topic here. How did this happen to us? Our parents work on a farm, and had to fight off wolves on occasion. They also owned a cat at the time that my mother was pregnant with me, and the generator that they used to power the house before it got hooked up to the grid, it ran on E710. There you go. Mystery solved. Nobody knew this kind of thing was even possible back then, and at last count, fauna sapiens make up about 20% of the entire Heldover core. This just isn't readily visible because of how the standard issue arbor obscures our traits. And as I said before, so long as you're willing to fight, Super Earth doesn't really care what you look like, so it just rarely comes up. That being said, there are some who have extremely powerful affinities. I know of one such faunus over on the Western Front who is 9 feet tall He barely fits in the Pelican. He weighs several hundred pounds and possesses a Bosch Torox affinity. He's a big old bull that can wrestle an automaton Hulk, flamethrower, and buzzsaw or not. Dude's gonna win. I mean, call me insane if you must, but doesn't that sound like someone you like to have on your team? I think he ripped the Gatling gun off of a destroyed Patriot Walker once and used it to defend an extraction site for the rest of his team. But considering the fire control systems are located within the Patriot itself, I think he was just making it up and blowing smoke up my butt. Now, the big question I mentioned before. Can you trust us? Well, can you trust unmutated humans completely, or are there some bad apples there? You're going to get the same answer here. I can only speak for myself. You can always trust me, and I will always be there trying to help you. I love what I do. I love Super Earth, and I hope I can keep on doing this for a very long time. We're all on the same side here. And as I said before, fighting the enemies of democracy gives my brother some measure of peace, and the harder the fight, the more he is, I don't want to say calm. Comfortable? In familiar territory. He understands it. I really don't know. But it makes him happy. So I don't see him stopping anytime soon either. I tell you all of this not to call attention to what divides us because I don't think of things that way. Ever since the conclusion of the Unification Wars, humanity did away with such outdated notions like borders and race and united as a species. I still see us as part of that species. And we're all working toward the same goal. We just have quirks about us that allow us to serve in other special ways. We're no more alien than an autistic person might be. I just told you all of this because I really do believe that every time someone stands up and says who they are, the world becomes a better, more interesting place. I mean, you've already told me your stories, so it's only fair that I tell you mine. I hope you've enjoyed this little storytelling, lore, fanfiction session of mine in addition to the nightly news. I'm always looking for new ways to create content and entertain, and I was encouraged to share this backstory about my family. Putting aside the persona of the angel for a moment, something that is great and wonderful about this game is that it is so open that people can fill in and write their own stories. From the John Helldivers to the Doomslayers to a really great guy who runs an AI named Walter on his ship, to a tiny kitten girl who wishes the universe was a kinder, more gentler place than it actually is. So long as you're willing to fight for liberty, for freedom, for democracy, and for Super Earth, nothing is off the table. May we all, forever, stay free.